ranking random Juggernog locations, and coming into the number 10 spot on our list we have got Diarize. Yes, you are hearing that right, ladies and gentlemen. There are only 7 spots on this list, and yet I am putting Diarize at the number 10 spot. And that is because I honestly feel like putting this map at the number 7 spot would genuinely be an insult to the other maps on our list. And oh my goodness, does this map just give me a headache. I mean, first of all, random Juggernog locations are hard enough as they are, with having to find where Juggernog is in the first place. And so when you've got random Jug locations that are also constantly moving up and down, it just makes things significantly more difficult, and not in a good way. I mean, the amount of times I've gone to buy Juggernog on this map, and before I could reach it, it's just decided to piss off upstairs, is truly remarkable. And mind you, all this could have been fixed by just putting an indicator above each elevator spot, showing you what's in that elevator, and by also making the key have infinite use. But no, instead of that, you've got not a single clue of what's in each elevator until it decides to show up. And secondly, you only have one use of the key before you've got to go find it again, which is such a dick move from the developers. And you could argue that the first key could be used to buy Jug the first time, but you've got to remember that you have no clue where Jug even is in the first place. And I mean, let's just be real with ourselves. No game of Diarize is complete without a bit of a whoopsie daisy, and at that point you haven't got time to muck around trying to find an elevator key, because by that point you'll just be falling down the side of a building again. Like, oh dude, I really hope that Diarize Remastered is able to fix these issues, because I think the perk system on this map is one of the things that holds Diarize back the most. And so because of all that, Diarize comes in at the number 10 spot. Rightio, coming into the number 6 spot on our list today, we have got Shino Numa. And this was a very close decision between Shino Numa and the map that I've got at number 5. But for number 6, I decided to give it to Shino Numa. Now, I don't like the random Juggernog locations on this map for a couple of reasons. And the first and main reason why comes down to Shino Numa's layout. The way Shino Numa is laid out, with you spawning in a main central hub and then having 4 spokes branching out from that hub, I think really removes the element of progressing through a map. And what I mean by that is, if you have a map with random Juggernog locations but the layout is more linear, you might get to the first random perk location and it might not be Juggernog, but at least you can just continue on and feel like you're still progressing further into the map and into the game. However, with this, the perks are like the end of the line at each spoke. So if you get there and it's quick revive or even double tap, it really just feels like a kick in the balls, because it's like, I've just taken a gamble and spent a couple thousand precious points on an early round just to be given a useless perk and to have to turn around, go back, and try again. And the second reason is, if Juggernog spawns in a more irrelevant part of the map, it can be quite the journey, especially through the swampy water, to go back there and buy it again if you go down. But mind you, this is not a problem on World at War Solo. I think it would have been better if you could just see what perk is in each spot after just opening the first door into an area, instead of having to open both doors to get it. So then at least you're not wasting so many precious points on an early round. And because of these annoyances, Shino Numa comes in at the number 6 spot. Coming into the number 5 spot on our list, we have got Nuke Town. And just a quick disclaimer, ladies and gentlemen, all the rankings on this list are completely biased to my own opinion, so please do not take this as an objectively ranked list. But do let me know what things you agree and disagree with in the comments, because I love reading what you guys have to say. But anyway, on to Nuke Town. I find this map annoying for a bit of a different reason to Shino Numa, because with Nuke Town, and unlike Shino Numa, you have absolutely no control over which perk shows up and when, due to the game essentially spawning in the next perk after several odd rounds have passed. And this can make you feel pretty helpless and frustrated as you're playing the map. And that's because progression within zombies, I believe, is a big part of the experience for most players. And the average progression generally looks something like this. And so when you've got a map that just throws that into complete chaos, I think that is what turns a lot of people away from playing Nuke Town. Although, in saying this, I personally don't find Nuke Town as annoying as Shino Numa, and that's for a couple of reasons. So For the first one being that when the perks do decide to show up, you can at least see where they are going to be, which is unlike Shino. And secondly, the fact that you have no control, I think actually makes it a little bit better, because when what I want doesn't show up, I tend to try and just accept that as a challenge as opposed to just finding it annoying, which is unlike Shino, where because I have a little bit more control over where I decide to go, makes things just a little bit more annoying than what I want doesn't show up. But that's just my personal opinion anyway. However, this does by no means make the system on Nuke Town a good perk system, and I think this could be improved by instead having the perks and Pack-a-Punch come down in a specific order tailored to the typical progression experience I mentioned before, and instead have them come down in random intervals. I think would have made the experience a lot better while still being interesting and different. And then maybe have an option on the menu screen to make them randomized if you want to play like that, so then you at least have a choice of how you want the map to play out. But for now, Nuke Town comes in at the number 5 spot. So coming in at the number 4 spot, ladies and gentlemen, we have got Zetsubo Co-op. Now, there were a few people commenting on the ranking Juggernog locations video that I uploaded last week about how Juggernog is actually random on this map, and you are partially right. So on solo, Juggernog is always in this bunker spot, which is what I was ranking in that video. However, on co-op, it is indeed random. And so for Zetsubo Co-op, whilst this is only one spot above Nuke Town, I do find it to be significantly better. And firstly, you might say that having Juggernog locations being random on a map the size of Zetsubo could be a pain in the backside. But I feel that because just about every part of the map in Zetsubo is relevant in some way at some point in the game, and that these perks are generally found in the most important areas of the map, I don't find it that much of a hassle to have to go and grab them. Plus, it is also great as well how you can see the perks coming down when they do decide to show up. I always appreciate that, as I mentioned in the Nuke Town ranking. So you might be wondering then, why is Zetsubo not higher on the list? Why is it at the number 4 spot? Well, the first problem I have is the fact that spiders will put webs over the perks, which I find super annoying, because the last thing you want to have while scrambling to buy Juggernog again is having to tear off a bunch of cobwebs whilst you're trying to buy it. And I could swear that this happens every time you go to buy Juggernog again. And the second thing is, despite me not finding it to be a big issue on this map, I still prefer the way it is on solo, where Juggernog is always in the bunker, because the bunker is just the central and most relevant part of the map. And I think just always having Juggernog in the bunker on co-op as well wouldn't do any harm and would just make the experience a little bit better. But overall, Zetsubo co-op's random Juggernog locations aren't the worst thing in the world. They're just okay, and that's why I've put it at the number 4 spot. Coming into the number 3 spot on our list today, we have got the Giant. Now, we're starting to get into the maps which I feel overall benefit from having random Juggernog locations. And so, with the Giant being the third installment of Darius in Call of Duty Zombies, I personally feel that if you are going to remaster a map, and especially one for the third time, you've got to at least give it a bit of a shake-up. Obviously not too big of a shake-up, but just change a few things to make the map feel somewhat different and a little bit more interesting. And I think they did it well for the Giant by making Juggernog have random spawns, because with maps that are quite basic like the Giant, if you have perks that are always in the same place like with Darius, it makes the map too predictable and removes an element of replayability. Whereas with the Giant, by having Juggernog spawns randomized, it at least gives you an element of when you're playing the game of having to find where Juggernog is. And it just makes every game a little bit different too, because some Juggernog locations are obviously a little bit more dangerous and tricky than others. Although in saying this, I still feel like these random Juggernog locations could have been made a little bit better. And what I mean by that is 4 out of the 5 locations on this map where Juggernog could be, in my opinion, are far too close to each other. Like, I feel like there needs to be some down by this far teleporter or near where you start the mini Easter egg, just to spread them out and give a little bit more relevance to these areas of the map. But in saying that, the Giant still comes in at the number 3 spot. Rightio, coming in at the number 2 spot on our list, we have got Shangri-La. Now, first of all, the way that Shangri-La is laid out is quite well complemented by the idea of having random jug locations. And that is because there are 2 routes that lead from spawn to power. And so if they made it that Juggernog was always on one of these routes, it would heavily skew that route as the favorite by the majority of players and would make the other side of the map a lot more irrelevant. But by having Jug being on either one side or the other, balances that out nicely and subsequently gives importance to both sides of the map. However, I do have a bit of a gripe with the 2 Juggernog locations themselves, as they can be a bit dodgy. I mean, with the one on the minecart side, it is right in this little pocket, and you have got absolutely no chance of escaping if things do go a bit pear-shaped, unless you have the baby gun, obviously. And the other side is not much better either, as you've got the mud leading away on one side of Juggernog, and then you've got this narrow bridge on the other, which are the absolute ideal spots if you want to go down. And so I think these could have been improved a little bit by putting the Jug on the minecart side, kind of near the minecart, and also on the other side by putting it near the water slide, so then at least if things do get a bit hairy, you have an escape option. But I think it's also important to understand that really no matter where they put Juggernog on Shangri-La, it would kind of always be difficult, because the nature of the map is that it is very closed quarters just about everywhere. And so I kind of understand that that's just the way that the map is. But that definitely does not take away from how well the random Jug locations on this map complement the layout of the map. And so because of that, I have put Shangri-La at the number 2 spot. And coming into our number 1 spot, you've probably already figured out what it is. It is Shadows of Evil. If there ever was a perfect example of how to have random Juggernog spawns in a map, Shadows of Evil comes pretty close. And as I mentioned with Shangri-La, the layout of Shadows of Evil is well complemented by having random Juggernog locations, as the layout of Shadows of Evil is actually quite similar to Shino, as you've got the spawn / central hub area and then have 3 districts branching out from that. And so once again, by having the Juggernog locations randomized ensures that each section of the map has equal importance. However, unlike Shino, this map will actually tell you what perk is in each location without even having to enter the area itself, which just saves all the pain and trouble that you go through on Shino. Another thing is that the Juggernog locations within each area themselves are also quite important to the map. And what I mean by that is each Juggernog location is placed in the upstairs area of the districts, and without these locations being here, the upstairs passages through each district would be almost entirely useless. And so the more you just delve into it, the more you realize just how well random Juggernog locations were integrated into Shadows of Evil. And if I had to have one complaint with this map, it would be that the Jug location in the canals area is quite prone to getting cornered and has got me a few times, to say the least. But I'm not going to let that detract from Shadows of Evil coming in at the number 1 spot. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.